Enough. Today I take my name back. I didn't say it out loud. The words lived on the edge of my tongue, sharp like the scalpel I'd held 1,000 times. But now in my hand, there was only a carving knife for the Thanksgiving turkey, shiny, dull, ceremonial. Aurora raised her glass, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light, and spoke with perfect clarity. Every month I help my father, $7,000, so he can live with dignity, because family is what matters most. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The room erupted in applause, the kind that slams into you like an operating light, blinding your eyes. Samuel, my son-in-law, gave me a congratulatory nod. Smug as ever, the guests leaned forward, their faces lit with admiration. Aurora smiled at me, waiting for the spotlight to crown her. I smiled back, the practiced, weary smile of a surgeon who's learned to comfort patients when the news is already terminal. On the outside, I was a grateful father. Inside, I heard the hollow clang of an empty tin can, the one where I keep spare change for discount prescriptions. The Thanksgiving table was a theater stage. The turkey glistened, cranberries gleamed like jewels, wine flowed like victory banners. My chair was a prop, my role simple. The frail old father whose daughter was a saint. The truth was rotting quietly under the tablecloth. I memorized her words as if charting a patient's vitals. 7,000 every month, dignity. Each phrase cut into me like a false diagnosis. I had no such money. My dignity was a faded coat, patched windows, and long nights working at the pharmacy just to keep heat in the house. Aurora leaned in to kiss my cheek, careful not to smudge her lipstick. Samuel clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder. You must be proud, sir. She's extraordinary. Sir, patients used to call me that when they believed I could stitch their lives back together. Now it sounded like a benediction at my own funeral. When it was my turn to raise a glass, I spoke of gratitude, my late wife's quiet strength, the honor of having lived a life of service, the truth that dignity isn't purchased with money, but earned with daily choices. No one listened. Their eyes returned to Aurora, to her necklace, to her legend. I sat through the rest of the dinner in silence, eating little, storing every smile, every laugh, every lie. Later, when the crowd drifted toward the fireplace, I excused myself, walking the hallway with deliberate steps. There, on a shelf in Samuel's study, I found a folder marked with his firm's logo. I traced it with my fingertips the way I once searched for a pulse. Paper whispered secrets. Behind me, his voice slid in smooth as anesthesia. Lost? Need help finding something? I closed the cabinet and met his reflection in the polished chrome. My hair was white, my posture straight, my eyes still the eyes of a surgeon. No, I found exactly what I was looking for. I said. He smiled, the kind of smile lawyers wear when they already know the verdict. When Aurora kissed me goodbye that night, she whispered, Dad, you don't mind that I said it, right? People love to hear that kind of story. I looked at her amber earrings, drops of frozen lies. It matters that it's true, I said. She rolled her eyes and shut the car door. I walked home through crunching snow, replaying her words. And in my mind, I saw a scalpel laid next to the turkey knife. One cuts the heel, the other carved for show. The question was, which one would I need for the lies I had just witnessed? The front door stuck as I pushed it open, though it's swollen from years of neglect. Inside, the air was colder than it should have been, my old furnace struggling again. I flicked on the lamp. A warm circle of light landed on the table, cluttered with pill bottles and stacked cans of soup. Cheap brands lined up like soldiers on the wrong side of a war. On the wall, framed in dust, hung a photo of my wife. She was standing by the river, holding up a trout with both hands, laughing so hard her shoulders shook. Her eyes caught the sun like a secret. I lowered myself into the chair opposite her and whispered the bitter truth. Saying it out loud felt like diagnosis day. I was not living on $7,000 a month. I was stretching every dollar, buying generic meds, counting pills into plastic bags. My dinners were tin can meals, warmed over a squeaking stove. Most nights, I worked graveyard shifts at the pharmacy across town. A surgeon, reduced a consultant under fluorescent lights, wearing a green vest with cheap name tag. Matthew. My phone buzzed. Aurora's message lit the screen. Dad, everyone adored the toast tonight. Love you so much. I stared at the empty sugar jar on the counter. When she was little, she used to sneak spoonfuls of sugar straight from that jar, laughing when I caught her. Now she fed strangers spoonfuls of lies, sweet and poisonous. Morning came gray. I walked to the pharmacy through mist, coat buttoned up to my chin. On the sidewalk, Abigail, my neighbor with the summer petunias, waved me down. Matthew. I saw Aurora's toast online. What a blessing, having a daughter so generous. Must be wonderful, living so comfortably now. Her voice was kind, but each word cut like jagged glass. Awkward conversations, I thought. The kind of small talk that hides a wound no one dares to probe. I forced a smile. Comfort is like cholesterol, Abigail. You don't see it until it blocks an artery. She blinked, then nodded, as if I'd said something wise. Well, you're lucky either way. That night, under the buzzing lights of the pharmacy, I spread my old papers across the counter. Check stubs, bank slips, scribbled notes. The silence roared like a ventilator machine. I thought of all the times I'd held someone's life in my hands, stitching chaos into order. Now I was dissecting my own. When I trudged home near dawn, my knees stiff from the cold, I nearly tripped over an envelope on the welcome mat. No return address. The paper was thick, torn unevenly at the edges, as if ripped from a larger file. I sat at my table and slid the paper free. A bank statement. At the top, a neat entry. Transfer $7,000 for father. But the recipient wasn't me. The money had been redirected, month after month, to companies I recognized from Samuel's smooth dinner conversations. Shell corporations with names slick as oil, clean as bleach. Suspicious document. I muttered. My pulse quickened. Each line on the page was a stitch, poorly sewn, holding together a wound of lies. I placed a statement next to the scalpel I kept in my drawer, a relic from my last operation, polished and perfect. For years, it had been a symbol of what I once was. Tonight, it looked like an instrument for something else entirely. I turned toward the window. Frost crawled along the glass. Outside, the wooden steps creaked under a slow, deliberate weight. Someone was standing on my porch. The steps moaned again. My hand hovered over the scalpel on the table. Absurd weapon for a 65-year-old man. But it steadied me. I pulled the door open before the knock could land. Celine stood there, brushing snow from her shoulders. She used to write for the local paper, sharp, precise, with the eye of a surgeon herself. Matthew, can I come in? I stepped aside. She moved like someone who'd already decided she belonged here. Her gaze fell on the envelope, and the bank statement spread across my table. Good. You got it. I narrowed my eyes. You left this? She shook her head. Let's just call it from a friend. I saw Samuel's little victory video last night. The so-called toast. It stank of performance. People eat that up. But me? I checked the credits. I dig into who paid for the stage lights. She sat, poured herself tea without asking, then fixed me with a reporter's stare. I can help you, Matthew, but only if you're ready to say the words out loud. Her challenge hung between us like a scalpel midair. I whispered them. My daughter lied. She steals in my name. Celine nodded once. Good. That's a start. Before I could answer, my phone rang. The name on the screen jolted me. Andrew, a voice from another life, another operating room. Old man, you alive? I saw that video. You looked like you were counting this town's ribs. I laughed dryly. I need more than a checkup, Andrew. I need your memory and your obsessive record keeping. Ha! Still bossing me around. Send what you have. Let's open this chest and see what's inside. The cavalry had arrived. A journalist with ink-stained hands, a surgeon with a mind like a filing cabinet, and then Abigail, sweet Abigail, tapped on the back door carrying a thermos of soup. You look tired this morning. Thought you could use this. I stare at the three of them, allies gathering in my dim kitchen. Allies, I said aloud, testing the word like a new suture knot. We laid the evidence bare. The suspicious document. Aurora's purchase list for things I never received. Notes from the pharmacy ledger. Celine recorded my testimony, her pen scratching, her phone light red. Andrew called in favors with banker friend, asking careful, indirect questions. Abigail sat quietly, knitting in the corner, listening harder than anyone. Patterns emerged. Transfers marked for father routed into Samuel's LLCs. From there, the trail forked into real estate, apartments, storefronts, even a small cafe. At the end of the chain, a familiar name, Laura, Aurora's friend, smiling on Instagram beside shiny new condos. I exhaled. The true scheme. Say it was like finding the tumor on a scan, undeniable, malignant. The doorbell rang. My chest tightened. Celine turned off the recorder and hid it under her notebook. I opened the door to Samuel himself, suit immaculate, grin sharp. He strolled in without waiting. Matthew, you're making a mistake. These are legitimate transfers. Tax strategy. Nothing you need to worry about. He lowered his voice, switching from polished son-in-law to predator. Don't start something you can't finish. Aurora doesn't deserve that kind of embarrassment. I stepped closer until I could smell his cologne. Tax strategy is when you save on napkins, not when you save on truth. That's amputation. He chuckled. Your metaphors are cute, but here's reality. Be a wise father. Stay quiet. Before I could answer, Celine stepped out from the shadows, recorder in hand. Conversations already documented, Mr. Samuel. He froze, eyes narrowing. His smile collapsed into a thin line. Delete it, or lawyer up. I met his stare. I've paid my whole life for honesty. Silence costs more. His jaw worked. He leaned in close, voice low and venomous. Then you'd better start saving, old man, because silence, we can still buy it. Truth, not so much. He turned on his heel and left, wet boot prints smearing across my floor like blood on tile. The room went quiet. Abigail's knitting needles stopped mid-stitch, and then Celine's phone buzzed. She lifted it, eyes widening. Matthew, it's Aurora. She just posted something about you, and you need to see it. Celine turned her phone toward me. Aurora's post glowed against the dark. A photo of me at the Thanksgiving table, head bowed, knife in hand. The caption read, "So thankful for my father. His dignity inspires me every day. Family first, gratitude." The comments were a flood of hearts and applause emojis. "What an angel," one woman wrote. "You're lucky to have her," another said. The theater continued, louder than ever. I felt my pulse in my throat. She's building a monument out of my silence. Andrew leaned closer, scanning the photo. Then break it. Silence is their foundation. Start pulling bricks. Celine tapped the screen. This is why we gather evidence. Not just whispers, documents, recordings, proof. That's how you flip the story. I looked at the table where the bank statement lay beside my scalpel. Words etched themselves into my mind. Evidence collection. We worked in shift that night. Andrew cross-referenced names, calling in markers from old colleagues. Celine drew a timeline, deposits, withdrawals, properties. Abigail brought her nephew's real estate records. Laura's name appeared again and again, attached to condos, parking garages, a cafe. All purchased in cash. I wrote a letter to Aurora, draft after draft, tearing each to shreds. The final version was only 4 words. Help is the truth. When exhaustion set in, Andrew put a hand on my shoulder. You save lives under worse pressure. You can save your own name. I closed my eyes. The smell of disinfectant and blood came back. The sound of a monitor flatlining. The way my wife once steadied me after a brutal night. Her voice echoed, "Matthew, you're not a god. You're a man who refuses to look away." That was my internal break. The moment when the fracture becomes permanent. I was no longer pretending to be the grateful, quiet father. I was a surgeon again, preparing for a high-risk procedure. I picked up the phone and called Aurora. Come tomorrow morning. I said, bring Samuel. She sighed. Dad, please, don't start your sermons. You'll only embarrass yourself. Embarrassment is coming whether I invite it or not, I said, and hung up. That night, I placed the scalpel and the turkey knife side by side on the table, a silent altar to the choice ahead. One for healing, one for carving illusions. Morning brought a sharp knock. When I opened the door, Aurora stood there, Samuel at her side, and behind them, Laura. She was smiling, already holding her phone up like she was streaming live. Matthew, Samuel began, we're here to settle this peacefully. I gestured toward the kitchen. On the table, Celine had set up her laptop, slides glowing with names and numbers. Andrew hovered beside her, notes in hand. Abigail poured tea like a witness at a tribunal. Then sit, I said, because today you'll all see what I call the true scheme. And then, as if on cue, a siren screamed outside. Not for me, not for them, but the sound pierced the room, vibrating against every fragile truth we were about to rip open. They sat at my kitchen table, like defendants waiting for a verdict. Aurora crossed her arms, defensive, while Samuel leaned back with the smug patience of a man convinced the law bend for him. Laura scrolled her phone, camera half raised as if the whole meeting was just another chance for content. I turned the laptop toward them. Celine clicked, and the first slide appeared, a neat column of bank statements. Transfers, $7,000 for father. The dates lined up month after month. Except, Celine said, her voice flat as a scalpel's edge, those transfers didn't reach Matthew. They landed here. Another click. Company names filled the screen. Samuel Shell Firms. All too familiar. Aurora laughed brittle. This is ridiculous. Those are investments. Dad, you know nothing about finance. Andrew cut her off. Investments don't end up as condos in Laura's name. The next slide revealed property records. Shiny apartments, a cafe, a parking lot. Laura's smile faltered just for a second before she plastered it back on. Samuel leaned forward, jaw tightening. Enough games. These documents are taken out of context. Tax strategy. Perfectly legal. I slammed my palm against the table. Don't use the word strategy like it's a scalpel. This isn't precision, it's theft. And you did it in my name. Aurora's cheeks flushed. Dad, stop. You'll humiliate me in front of everyone. Do you want me to look like a liar? I stared at her. You already do. The silence was surgical, the kind that comes before either saving a life or losing it. Abigail poured tea with trembling hands, her eyes never leaving Aurora's face. Celine pressed play on an audio clip. Samuel's voice filled the room. Be a wise father. Stay quiet. Samuel shot up, his chair scraping the floor. That recording is illegal. You'll regret this. Celine didn't blink. Maybe, but the court of public opinion doesn't care about admissibility. It cares about the story. And your story just broke. Aurora looked at me, her expression softening for the first time. Dad, please, you'll destroy us. I wanted to remember her as the little girl who once held my hand through crowded markets, her grip fierce, her laughter brighter than the sun. Instead, I saw the woman who weaponized my name for applause. This isn't me destroying you, I said quietly. This is you revealing yourselves. Aurora's phone buzzed. A notification flashed across her screen, and her eyes widened. Samuel snatched the device, but not before I caught a glimpse of the headline. Celine leaned forward. What is it? Aurora's lips trembled. The story, it's already out there. And then my kitchen filled with the sharp buzz of incoming messages, every phone lighting up at once. The kitchen lit up like an emergency ward, phones buzzing, screens flashing, voices rising. Celine's phone was first. Breaking. Surgeon's daughter's charity a sham? Her eyes flicked over the article, lips curling into a grim smile. Someone leaked the files, she whispered. Aurora grabbed her phone back from Samuel. The glow of the screen reflected off her trembling face. This is slander. They're twisting everything. But I could see it. The panic in her pupils, wide and darting. The kind I used to see when patients realized their body was failing. and no amount of denial could stitch it back together. Samuel barked orders, already shifting into lawyer mode. We'll sue. We'll claim harassment. We'll spin this. He jabbed a finger at me. And you'll retract everything. Old man. You'll say you were confused, grief-stricken, unstable. I rose slowly from my chair. Confused? No, I've never been clearer. You stole my name. You turned me into a prop so you could build your empire. Andrew placed more documents on the table. Property deeds, loan records, wire transfers. He tapped them like a surgeon pointing to x-rays. Every artery leads back to you, too. Every blockage has your names carved into it. Aurora's voice cracked. Dad, why are you doing this? We're family. I leaned forward, my hands braced on the table. Family isn't theater, Aurora. Family is truth. And you chose spectacle. The tea Abigail had poured sat untouched, steam curling upward like a ghost. She whispered, almost to herself, it was all a lie. Celine's phone buzzed again. Local station picked it up. They want a statement from you, Matthew. My throat tightened. I'd spent my life speaking in operating rooms. My words clipped, efficient, carrying life or death weight. I had never prepared to speak against my own blood. But the story was already breathing on its own, feeding off lies, pulling oxygen from silence. If I didn't guide it, it would devour me whole. Samuel slammed his fist against the table. If you speak, I'll bury you in lawsuits. I'll drag your reputation through the mud. I'll make sure people remember you not as a surgeon, but as a senile old man who betrayed his daughter. For a moment, his words hung heavy, poisonous. And then Andrew chuckled low and dry. You really think a man who's already stood in operating rooms with blood up to his elbows cares about mud? I felt something shift in me. A clean break, irreversible. This wasn't just about money. This was about dignity, about my wife's memory, about my grandchildren, who deserved to know the difference between theater and truth. I picked up the scalpel from the table and held it between us. Its blade caught the weak morning light. Do you know what this is? I asked. Samuel sneered. A relic? No, I said softly. It's a reminder that precision matters. And now, it's time for precision and justice. Aurora's phone buzzed again. This time, her face drained of all color. She turned the screen toward Samuel, her hands shaking. They're not just writing articles. There's an investigation. Samuel snatched the phone, scanned the headline, and cursed under his breath. His mask cracked, fear flickering behind arrogance. Outside, a car door slammed. Heavy footsteps crunched across the snow. Celine rose, her recorder ready. Andrew straightened, shoulders squared. Through the frosted glass, a shadow appeared. Someone official had arrived at my door. A knock shook the door, firm and deliberate. Everyone froze. Samuel's eyes narrowed, his lips pressed into a tight line. Aurora clutched her phone like a lifeline. I opened the door. 2 men in dark coats stood on the porch, badges glinting against the pale morning light. Behind them, the chill wind carried the faint crackle of a police radio. Mr. Matthews? One asked. His voice was steady, official. We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding recent financial disclosures. Specifically, funds reported as monthly support payments. Aurora gasped. You can't just barge in here. But they already had the weight of authority with them. I stepped aside. Come in, I said. You'll want to speak with all of us. The living room turned into a makeshift courtroom. Samuel's composure frayed as the agents laid out questions, calm but relentless. Were you aware, one asked him, that funds listed as support for Matthew were redirected through your businesses? Samuel's reply was slick, automatic. Of course. It was a family arrangement, a way to maximize tax efficiency. Perfectly above board. The agent didn't flinch. And why? Then, do those funds end up financing properties under the name Laura Mason? Laura dropped her phone. It clattered across the hardwood. I just invested when they told me to. I didn't know. Aurora grabbed her arm. Shut up, Laura. The agents exchanged a glance, scribbling notes. Celine's recorder was still running. Abigail sat quietly, knitting unraveling in her lap, the yarn tangling with every lie. Samuel turned his fury toward me. This is your doing. You invited them here. You want to ruin us. I met his gaze. You ruined yourself. You used me as your prop. Now you face the lights without the script. The agents rose. We'll be conducting a formal investigation. We recommend all parties prepare documentation. Failure to comply could result in subpoenas. Aurora's face was pale, her mouth trembling as if she wanted to speak, but couldn't. When the agents left, slamming the door against the winter air, the silence that followed was heavier than any gavel. Samuel rounded on me, rage unmasked. You think this is over? No, this is the start of war. You're dragging your own blood into scandal. Do you think the world will see you as a hero? No, they'll see a bitter old man, destroying his family for attention. His words might have cut once. Not anymore. I stood tall, shoulders squared like in the operating room. The truth doesn't destroy. Lies do. Aurora broke then, tears streaking her cheeks. Dad, please, stop this before it goes too far. We can fix it. We can make it right. Her words trembled, half plea, half performance. I saw the little girl she once was. Yet I couldn't ignore the woman who had stood in front of a crowd and turned me into her prop. Andrew whispered at my side, low and firm. Stay the course. This is only the first incision. Celine glanced at me, her pen tapping against her notebook. They're cornered, but you know cornered animals lash hardest. Outside, tires screech against ice. A black SUV pulled up in front of my house. Its engine idled, windows tinted. Samuel's face shifted. Recognition. He smirked, almost relieved. Good. Reinforcements. The back door of the SUV opened. A figure stepped out slowly, coat collar high, face hidden. And as the figure started toward my porch, I felt the same chill I used to feel in the OR, the moment just before the heart either starts beating again or flatlines. The figure climbed the porch steps with deliberate calm, boots crunching the frost. As the door opened, the cold rushed in first, followed by a tall woman in a charcoal coat. Her hair was pulled tight, her eyes sharp, carrying the weight of authority without needing to announce it. Samuel straightened like a schoolboy caught misbehaving. Detective, he said quickly, I was just about to call you. She ignored him and focused on me. Dr. Matthews? I'm Detective Carver, Financial Crimes Division. Her voice was low, professional, but not unkind. We'll need to speak privately. Aurora stepped forward, her tone breaking. Detective, this is a mistake. My father is confused, grieving. He doesn't understand. Carver raised a hand, silencing her with surgical precision. I've already reviewed preliminary evidence. Transfers, property records, audio recordings. Her gaze slid toward Celine, who nodded subtly. The investigation is moving forward. Samuel's mask cracked. This is absurd. You're treating us like criminals for trying to support family. There's nothing illegal about. Carver cut him off. Then you'll have no problem handing over full financial disclosures. Today, the room was tight with tension. Aurora clutched her coat around her, trembling. Laura looked ready to bolt. Abigail sat frozen. Her knitting dropped to the floor. I finally spoke. Detective, I've lived my life cutting truth from lies. I won't let mine be rewritten. Carver studied me for a beat, then nodded. That's exactly why we're here. She placed a card on the table. Tomorrow morning, statement, documents, everything you've got. If you want your story heard, that's the time. Samuel bristled. You don't dictate terms in my house. I smiled faintly. Good thing it's mine. Carver turned to leave. As she stepped outside, the engine of the SUV revved, headlights slicing through the frosted glass. For a moment, the beams illuminated Aurora's face, pale, hollow, trapped. When the door shut, silence crashed back in. Celine's recorder clicked off, leaving only the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. Samuel finally exploded. You smug bastard. You've destroyed everything. Our businesses, our reputation, our family. I faced him square. I didn't destroy it. I just pulled back the curtain. Aurora's tears spilled over. Dad, please. Don't do this. You'll ruin us. I wanted to believe her tears, but I saw the calculation behind them, the same performance she gave at the Thanksgiving table. She wasn't mourning the truth. She was mourning her stage. Andrew leaned close, whispering, "They're bleeding now, but wounded predators bite hardest." Samuel pointed a shaking finger at me. "If you take the stand tomorrow, I'll make sure you regret it. You'll lose everything. Your pension, your dignity, your name." I stepped closer, my voice steady. "I've already lost too much to silence. Dignity doesn't come from checks. It comes from truth. And tomorrow I'll cut clean." Aurora gasped. "You wouldn't dare." Outside, the SUV's engine roared again, this time louder. The headlights swung toward my house, flooding the front windows. Then the lights cut out. The house dropped into sudden darkness. The blackout held the house in its grip. My old walls groaned as the furnace shut down, leaving us wrapped in silence and cold. For a moment, only the faint drip of melting ice outside broke the dark. Samuel cursed. "They're trying to scare us." Classic intimidation. But I knew better. This wasn't intimidation. It was timing. Darkness is where truth feels most fragile, and where lies think they thrive. Andrew lit a candle from a mantel. Its flame cast a halo, shadows dancing across every face. I saw Aurora's trembling hands, clutching her phone. Laura shrank into the corner, her glossy mask on. Samuel's eyes burned hot with anger, and Celine's pen scratched against paper undeterred. "Tomorrow," I said softly, "this darkness will belong to them, not me." Celine's candlelight caught her smile. "Then let's make sure you're ready." The public statement, the evidence, the voice they can't twist. I nodded, though my stomach nodded. I had spoken to patients on the edge of death, to families waiting for news that would shatter their lives. But this would be different. This would be to the world, and against my own blood. The morning of Thanksgiving came again, 1 year later. My daughter had planned her grand dinner once more. This time, the invitations were larger, the guest list longer. Samuel had somehow convinced investors to show their faces again, promising resilience, redemption. They wanted to prove the scandal had been nothing more than confusion. I arrived wearing my only good suit, the one my wife had chosen for me years ago. I carried no gift, no dish, only a folder of evidence. As I stepped into their gleaming house, laughter swirled around me. The table was even more extravagant than a year before. Crystal glasses, golden candles, a turkey as fat as the lies it symbolized. And there at the head stood Aurora. She raised her glass, her voice strong, her smile flawless. This year, I am grateful for resilience, for family, for second chances, and for my father, who taught me that dignity is eternal. Applause erupted. Phones lifted, cameras flashed. She basked in it, glowing like the heroine of her own script. I rose slowly, chair scraping against the floor. Silence rippled, broken only by the clink of a spoon dropped somewhere near the kitchen. All eyes turned to me. I held the folder in my hands, heavy as a heart before incision. "You speak of dignity, Aurora. Tonight, I will show everyone here what that word actually means." Gasps fluttered across the table. Samuel stiffened, his smile straining. Aurora's glass shook in her hand. I opened the folder and spread the first page, bank transfers, signatures, dates, across the linen tablecloth. I placed a recorder beside it, Samuel's voice hissing from its small speaker. "Be a wise father. Stay quiet." The guests shifted uncomfortably, their applause dying in their throats. Whispers began to circulate, sharp as scalpels. Aurora's face drained of color. Samuel slammed his fist on the table. "This is a circus. Don't listen to him. He's twisting everything." But I kept laying out the papers, each one brighter under the chandelier than the candles themselves. Properties in Laura's name, LLC records, forged checks. The whole anatomy of their scheme, dissected for all to see. I looked around the table. You applauded last year for a story built on lies. Tonight, you'll applaud the truth or not at all. Aurora's hand flew to her mouth. Laura dropped her fork, the sound ringing in the silence. And then, from the far end of the table, a single voice spoke. Is this true? It was one of Samuel's investors, his face pale, eyes narrowed at the documents. Aurora stammered. Samuel opened his mouth to reply, but the front door burst open before he could speak. Flashes exploded in the hallway. Reporters, cameras, microphones, all pouring inside like floodwaters. The living room flooded with light, blinding, merciless, the kind only cameras can create. Reporters shouted over one another. Microphones thrust like weapons. Guests stumbled back. Wine glasses toppled, the perfect Thanksgiving table collapsing into chaos. Aurora froze mid-breath, her smile fossilized. Samuel shoved forward, palms raised. This is private property. You can't just barge in here. But the cameras didn't care. They captured every flicker, every crack. My folder of documents lay open on the table. The pages spread like surgical charts. The microphones turned toward me. Dr. Matthews, is it true your daughter lied about supporting you financially? Were the funds laundered through her husband's companies? Do you have proof? I stood straighter than I had in years. My voice didn't shake. The proof is in front of you. Every check, every transfer, every lie. Gasps, scribbles, the snapping frenzy of shutters. I felt the room tilt, not against me, but toward the truth. Aurora's voice cracked. Dad, please, stop this. You don't know what you're saying. I turned toward her, my voice calm but merciless. I know exactly what I'm saying. I lived the bitter truth of your lie. I lived on scraps while you fed on applause. The reporters devoured it, pens scratching, cameras burning. The guests, once allies, now edged away from Aurora and Samuel as if the sauna were contagious. One investor, face grim, pointed at Samuel. You dragged us into this. If even half of this is true, our contracts are worthless. Samuel snapped, rage boiling over. This old man is delusional. He's bitter, jealous, senile. He pointed at me, veins pulsing in his neck. You're not seeing a whistleblower. You're seeing a lonely man trying to destroy his own family. For a heartbeat, the words hung heavy. Cameras swung toward me, waiting. I raised a scalpel I had carried in my pocket, not as a weapon, but as a symbol. Its blade caught the camera light. This is what precision looks like. My entire life was about cutting to the truth, saving lives by facing what others refuse to see. Tonight, I've done the same, only the patient is my own name. Silence spread, deeper than applause, thicker than protest. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. Aurora collapsed into her chair, face buried in her hands. Samuel's fury twisted into desperation. You'll regret this, Matthew. I'll bury you in lawsuits. I'll strip you of everything. You'll die disgraced. I met his eyes, steady. Better to die with the truth than live with a lie. Then chaos. One of the reporters shouted. The prosecutor's office has just confirmed they're opening a formal investigation into Samuel and Aurora's finances. Phones buzzed. Breaking news, alerts flashing across the guest screens. Aurora looked up, mascara streaking her cheeks, her mouth trembling. And Samuel, his mask shattered completely. He lunged across the table toward me, his hand outstretched, rage-blind. The cameras caught everything. Samuel's hand slammed against my chest before anyone could react. The table lurched. Glasses toppled. Cranberry sauce splattered across the linen like blood. Gasps rose from the guests. Cameras kept flashing, hungry, merciless. Stop it. Aurora shrieked, clutching his arm. Not here. But Samuel's fury was unleashed. His voice thundered. You want humiliation, old man? You want to ruin my wife and me? Then I'll ruin you. I'll drag you into court until you can't afford groceries. I'll paint you as incompetent, unstable, senile. I'll strip you of what little dignity you have left. The room spun into a frenzy. Reporters scribbled faster. Guests whispered like a jury murmuring during trial. I stood steady, though my heart thudded hard. I've already lived through worse battles than your tantrums. Threats are just anesthesia before the real pain. Aurora shoved Samuel back. Her face streaked with tears, mascara bleeding into the corners of her mouth. Dad, please don't let this destroy us. We can still fix it. Just Don't talk to the prosecutors. Don't talk to the press. Stay quiet, and we'll make it go away. Her words clung to me like old memories of her hand in mine as a child. For a fraction of a second, I wanted to believe her. But then I remembered the empty sugar jar, the cheap meals, the long nights in pharmacy, while she painted me as her golden trophy. Silence already cost me enough. I said. Celine stepped forward, recorder still running. Aurora, Samuel, you should stop digging. Every word you say only confirms what's in these documents. Samuel's face twisted. He pointed at her. And you'll be sued for defamation. I'll crush your pathetic newspaper until it's nothing but ash. Celine didn't flinch. Funny thing about ash, it scatters in the wind, carrying truth farther than you can stop. Andrew put a hand on my shoulder, steadying me as if we were back in surgery. Stay calm, Matthew. Let them spiral. They're showing the world exactly who they are. But Samuel wasn't finished. He turned toward me again, jabbing a finger. If you push this, I'll go after guardianship. You're old, frail. I'll tell the court you're unfit to manage your affairs. You'll be under our control. Legally, permanently. The guests gasped. Aurora looked horrified, whispering, Samuel, stop. But not too loudly. My blood ran cold, then hot. Guardianship, the ultimate theft. Not just my money, not just my name, my very freedom. I straightened my voice steel. Try it. And when you do, I'll make sure every courtroom sees this for what it is. A daughter and her husband robbing a father more than money, of his soul. The cameras clicked, capturing my words, my face, my fury. Aurora broke then, collapsing into sobs, her shoulders shaking violently. Dad, I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted people to see me, to respect me. Samuel sneered at her weakness, pulling her upright. Don't beg him. He's not saving you. And then, over cacophony, a reporter's voice cut sharp. Dr. Matthews, prosecutors are outside right now. They want to take your statement this evening. Every eye turned to me. Aurora's sobs stilled. Samuel's jaw locked. I looked toward the doorway, where shadows moved beyond the glass, heavy and deliberate. The prosecutor's knock was already echoing in my mind. The knock came hard, deliberate, no hesitation. Reporters scattered toward the windows, trying to catch every angle. Guests shrank back, clutching coats and purses, desperate to avoid being part of the spectacle. Aurora froze in her chair, red-eyed, mascara streaks cutting down her cheeks like rivers of defeat. I opened the door. A woman in a gray suit stood there, badge clipped to her lapel, 2 assistants with files stacked in their arms. Her presence filled the room before she even spoke. Dr. Matthews? I'm Assistant District Attorney Vega. We've opened a preliminary case regarding financial misrepresentation and possible fraud. We'd like to take your statement tonight. Samuel stepped forward instantly, teeth bared in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Detective, this is absurd. My wife and I have done nothing wrong. This is a family dispute being twisted into scandal. Vega's gaze was cold steel. Mr. Clark, we've seen the filings. We've seen the property records. We're not here for theater. We're here for facts. She turned to me. Doctor, will you cooperate? The room held its breath. I thought of my wife, her laugh in the river wind. I thought of Aurora as a girl, holding sugar crystals in her palm, grinning through missing baby teeth. I thought of nights in the pharmacy, counting coins to buy pills I once prescribed by the thousands. Yes, I said, I'll testify. I'll provide every document. My dignity isn't theirs to spend. The assistants placed folders on the table, official seals pressed deep into the paper. Subpoenas. Aurora gasped. Samuel cursed under his breath. Laura reached for her coat, but Vega's assistant blocked her path. This is the beginning, Vega said firmly. And let me be clear, the more you obstruct, the worse it gets. Transparency will decide who survives this. Aurora collapsed into whispers, muttering, Dad, please don't let them destroy us. But I had already crossed the threshold. I wasn't a frail father at her dinner table anymore. I was a surgeon, steady hands, cutting where rot had spread too far. Samuel leaned close. So only I could hear. His voice was a hiss. You're finished. I'll drag this out until you die. Every headline, every rumor, they'll eat you alive. I met his gaze without blinking. Better to die clean than live rotting. The ADA's team began packing evidence, labeling folders. Reporters pressed against the doorway, snapping pictures, shouting questions. The air was heavy with the smell of spilled wine and shame. Vega looked at me once more. Doctor, tomorrow we file the first motions. You'll be called to stand within weeks. Are you ready for what comes? I glanced at Aurora. Her hands trembled as she reached toward me, half plea, half performance. Samuel yanked her back, his grip bruising. My answer came without hesitation. I've been ready since the night she raised that glass. Vega nodded. Then tomorrow it begins. The door slammed shut behind her. Silence fell, broken only by the soft hum of cameras still recording. Aurora sobbed. Samuel seethed. Guests stared as if witnessing an execution. And I stood, folder in hand, as the first troop cut into their empire began. But outside, through the frosted window, headlights flared again. Another car had arrived, unmarked, idling, waiting. Not reporters, not prosecutors. Something else. The unmarked car idled at the curb, engine rumbling like a growl in the dark. No press badges this time. No prosecutor seal. Just tinted windows, silent and waiting. Samuel noticed first. A slow smile crept back across his face. See, Matthew, not everyone buys your little performance. Some people still know where power lives. Aurora shifted uneasily. Samuel, who is that? He didn't answer. He straightened his tie, smoothed his hair, and walked to the window. The headlights blinked twice. A signal. His grin widened. I felt the air tighten, like an OR when the monitor flatlines. Abigail whispered, "Don't open that door." But Samuel already had. Cold air swept in as two men stepped inside. Not police, not journalists. Their coats were plain, their expressions carved from stone. One carried a slim briefcase. The other, nothing but the kind of silence that feels dangerous. "Mr. Clark," the taller one said. His voice was gravel. "We're here to discuss options." Samuel gestured proudly toward them, like he'd summoned guardian angels. "Matthew, Aurora, these gentlemen represent certain interests. Interests who prefer this situation vanish quietly." Celine leaned forward, recorder still in her palm. "And what do these interests want to return?" The man set the briefcase on the table. He opened it just enough to reveal neat stacks of cash. More than I'd seen in years. Aurora gasped, "Oh my God!" Samuel beamed. "See, Dad? We don't need prosecutors. We don't need scandals. We settle this like adults. You take the money, you stay quiet, and everyone walks away happy." I stared at the stacks. Bills crisp, unmarked. Blood money disguised as salvation. Abigail's knitting needles clattered to the floor. "Don't you dare," she whispered. Samuel leaned across the table, eyes gleaming. "Think about it, old man. You can finally live with dignity. Fix the furnace. Fill your pantry. No one ever has to know." I picked up the scalpel from my pocket, turning it slowly in my fingers, its steel catching the dim light. "Dignity," I said softly. "That word again. You think it for sale." The taller man shifted, his patience thinning. "Dr. Matthews, we suggest you reconsider." "Refuse," and this becomes difficult. Celine raised her phone higher. "Say that again." "On record." The man's eyes narrowed. "You won't play that for anyone." Tension snapped across the room like an exposed wire. Aurora buried her face in her hands. Samuel hissed, "Don't be a fool, Dad. This is your only chance." I looked at the briefcase one last time, then closed it with a snap. My dignity isn't paper. My silence is for sale. The room froze. The taller man's jaw tightened. He nodded once to his partner, and then the second man reached inside his coat. The man's hand slipped inside his coat. The room shrank around him. Every breath shallow, every heartbeat louder. For an instant, I thought I heard the same rhythm I'd heard countless times in the war, the monitor beeping just before crisis. Abigail gasped. Oh, God. Celine kept her recorder steady, but her other hand trembled against her notebook. Andrew moved slightly closer to me, like we were scrubbing together again, preparing for an incision. The man pulled out not a gun, but a folded document, thick paper, seals embossed deep into the fibers. He tossed it onto the table, the pages spreading across my folder of evidence. Guardianship petition, he said coldly. Filed this morning. Samuel Clark is custodian. Pending approval. You'll no longer have authority over finances, medical decisions, or testimony. Effective immediately if the judge signs the order. Aurora's cry pierced the air. Samuel, no, that's too far. Samuel ignored her, grinning at me with venom. You see, Matthew, I don't need your silence. I just need your rights. When this order's approved, you'll be a patient, not a surgeon. A ward, and wards don't testify. My chest tightened. Guardianship, the ultimate theft. My very autonomy cut out from under me. I picked up the paper, studied the lines, the false signatures, the lies dressed as legality. My hands didn't shake. Years in surgery had taught me how to steady a scalpel in a storm. You forged this. Samuel smirked. Prove it before the court believes it. By then, it'll be too late. Celine snapped a photo of the petition with her phone. Not too late. Evidence is evidence. The taller man stepped closer. Careful, journalist. You don't want to cross the wrong people. Andrew's voice was iron, and you don't want to threaten the wrong surgeon. He's cut through worse than you. The air vibrated with violence that hadn't yet spilled. Aurora reached toward me, sobbing, Dad, please. Just take the money. Let Samuel fix this. Don't let it go this far. I held the scalpel in my palm, its cold metal pressing against my skin. Aurora, I taught you that healing means cutting where it hurts. I won't stop now. The shorter man, the one who had stayed silent, finally spoke. His voice was low, gravelly. If you walk in court tomorrow, old man, you won't walk out. Think carefully. A hush dropped over the room. Even Samuel blinked at his bluntness. Celine whispered, Matthew, they're threatening your life. I exhaled slowly, as though steadying myself before the first incision. Then let them try. But if they do, I promise I'll make sure the whole world sees her hand stained. The taller man slammed the briefcase shut. We'll be in touch. Both men turned toward the door, leaving a trail of cold air in their wake. Samuel followed, still smiling, but his smile trembled now. The door slammed. Silence again. Only Aurora's sobs filled the air. I looked at the guardianship petition one last time, then slid it into my folder of evidence. They think they can cut me out. Tomorrow, I'll show them I can still cut deeper. And as the words left my mouth, the window shattered. A brick crashed onto the floor, glass exploding across the room. Attached to it, another envelope. Glass glittered across the floor like scattered ice. The brick rolled to stop at my feet, an envelope taped around it, edges crumpled. I bent slowly, my knees stiff, and peeled the paper free. Inside was a single sheet, typed in block letters. Stay silent or be silenced. Aurora screamed. Abigail crossed herself. Andrew swore under his breath. Celine snapped a photo, her pen already scratching notes. I held the letter steady, my voice calm. Threats are nothing new. I've seen them written on the faces of patients, in the silence of families. Fear is just anesthesia. They think it numbs you before the cut. But I'm awake. Samuel was gone, swept out with his hired muscle. Only Aurora remained, collapsed at the far end of the table, mascara smeared, hands clutching her phone. She whispered, Dad, it didn't have to be like this. You could have just let me shine. I stared at her, grief and fury tangled in my chest. Shine? At the cost of truth? At the cost of me? She didn't answer. Her phone buzzed again, screen lighting with Samuel's name. She ignored it, burying her face in her hands. Celine gathered the broken glass into a pile with careful hands. Matthew, tomorrow is the moment. The press is already circling. The prosecutor's office is ready. They want you front and center. Andrew placed a hand on my shoulder. Think of it like the final incision. You've exposed the rot. Now you cut it out. I looked at the scalpel in my palm. The same tool I'd once used to save a life now gleamed with a new purpose. On the table, beside the stack of lies and forged papers, it looked almost holy. Abigail's voice trembled. But what if they hurt you before you get there? I met her gaze. Then they prove my point, and the world will see them for what they are. Aurora lifted her head, eyes red, voice breaking. Dad, please, if you go through with this, I lose everything. My reputation, my family, my life. You'll kill me without a scalpel. Her words cut sharper than any blade. For a flicker of a second, I remembered her as a little girl sitting at our kitchen table, begging for one more story before bed. My throat tightened, but then I saw the forged guardianship petition, the brick, the threat. You killed us the moment you turned family into theater, I said. Celine pressed her recorder closer. Tomorrow we take this public. You'll stand, you'll speak, and you'll end it. I nodded slowly. Tomorrow, that night, the house was cold, the furnace groaning but failing to keep the frost at bay. I sat at the table beneath my wife's photo, the scalpel beside my notes, the brick still stained with dirt. The ghosts of every operation hovered with me, the weight of decisions, the gamble of life or death. At dawn, I dressed in my suit, tightened the tie with steady hands. In my breast pocket, I slipped the scalpel, not as a weapon, but as a symbol, a reminder. The courthouse steps waited. The cameras would be there. So would Samuel. So would Aurora. And as I stepped out into the freezing air, the unmarked SUV rolled up again, blocking the road ahead. The same men climbed out, faces hard, eyes cold. Only this time, they weren't carrying a briefcase. They stepped from the SUV without the briefcase this time. Just hard faces and harder intent. One reached inside his coat. I didn't flinch. I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped the live icon. The red light blinked to life, facing the courthouse steps behind me. Celine had taught me well. Tell the truth where everyone can hear it. Gentlemen, I said, loud enough for the camera, are you here to sell me dignity again or to steal it? They froze. The taller one clocked the live stream, the comments already blooming. His jaw flexed. He turned as if to leave, and Detective Carver's cruiser slid in behind the SUV, boxing it in. Doors flew open. Carver strode toward us with two uniforms and ADA Vega beside her, files tucked under one arm. Good morning. Vega said evenly, Mr. Clark, Ms. Mason, you're named in these warrants. Conspiracy to defraud, wire fraud, obstruction. And as for attempted guardianship by coercion, consider the petition preserved as evidence. Samuel, who just rounded the corner with Aurora, blanched. This is a stunt. It's procedure, Carver replied, lifting a small bag. We recovered this from your associate's pocket. Cash matching serials from your LLC withdrawals. Also, she added, nodding toward my phone, we heard last night's threats on 4 separate recordings. Celine stepped into frame, microphone raised, broadcasting to the crowd already gathering at the foot of the steps. Neighbors, investors, reporters, strangers with phones tilted like 1,000 unblinking eyes. Public humiliation, round 3. I faced them all. 1 year ago, a false toast made me a prop. I said, voice steady. Today I return the favor to the truth. Vega's assistants moved with clinical grace. Laura wilted as handcuffs clicked. Her bravado collapsed into a whisper. I'll cooperate. Samuel lunged, but 2 officers pinned him with efficient indifference. He thrashed, the mask gone, spitting rage that sprayed back across his own shoes. Cameras found every angle. Aurora stood apart, shivering without the protection of applause. Her eyes searched mine, that practiced tremble at the corners of her mouth. Dad, please. I lifted the scalpel from my breast pocket, not as a blade, but as a mirror. Its edge caught the winter sun and the crowd's reflection. Precision matters, I said. You carve a life from my name. I'm cutting my name free. Vega read out counts. Carver escorted Samuel down the steps past a wall of lenses. Investors turned away from him openly. A man I recognized from last year's table. the one who defended Samuel then, shook his head and stepped back, palms raised, as if the stain could leap from cloth to skin. Aurora took one small step toward me. I only wanted to be seen. You were, I said gently, but you forgot to look. I opened my folder and slid one final document to Vega, my civil suit already filed. And now we see it through. The officers led Samuel past the same marble column where, last Thanksgiving, Aurora had posed with me for photos. He twisted to shout something I'd heard 100 times. Threats, promises, empty thunder. It vanished into winter air. By noon, statements were done. Warrants served. The crowd thinned, replaced by the echo of footsteps and the rustle of discarded press badges. I walked home along the river, the cold biting but honest. Inside, my old house held its breath like a patient waking from anesthesia. I sat at the kitchen table beneath my wife's photo, her trout arcing in the sunlight, a simple victory, clean and earned. I set the turkey knife beside the scalpel. Same steel, two futures. One for carving spectacle, one for restoring function. I slid the scalpel back into its velvet sleeve and left the turkey knife in the drawer where glittering things go to sleep. Then I wrote the letter to my grandchildren, my hand steady. Help isn't the number on a check. Help is truth and trust. Never turn family into a performance. I signed it with my full name, the one I had taken back, and sealed the envelope with a piece of tape from the pharmacy, the kind that holds even when a storm rattles the windows. Outside, sirens faded. Inside, the furnace kicked on with a stubborn cough, then a steady hum. I brewed tea, sweetened it from the old sugar jar, and let the steam rise like a benediction. Final image. The photograph, the letter, the scalpel at rest, the stage lights gone. Only daylight left. And dignity, quiet, unpurchased, breathing in my house again. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.